For decades, the story of Israel and Iran was not one of open warfare, but of a simmering, lethal conflict fought in the shadows. These two powerful Middle Eastern nations, once allies before the 1979 Iranian Revolution, became entrenched in a bitter rivalry. Iran's new leadership adopted a fiercely anti-Israel stance, viewing it as an illegitimate state and an outpost of Western influence in the region. This ideological chasm defined their relationship, transforming it into a long-term strategic struggle. The conflict played out through espionage, cyberattacks, and targeted assassinations, a dangerous game where both sides sought to undermine the other without triggering a full-scale direct confrontation. This shadow war was characterized by plausible deniability. Israel was widely believed to be behind mysterious explosions at Iranian nuclear facilities and the assassinations of key scientists involved in the program. In turn, Iran was accused of orchestrating attacks on Israeli and Jewish targets around the world through its network of allied groups. These proxies, often referred to as Iran's axis of resistance, allowed Tehran to exert pressure on Israel from multiple fronts. Groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and various militias in Syria and Iraq became extensions of Iran's foreign policy, armed, trained, and funded to challenge Israeli interests without leaving Iran's direct fingerprints. At the heart of Israel's concerns has always been Iran's nuclear program. Israeli leaders have consistently stated they will never allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, viewing it as a direct and existential threat to their nation's survival. This fear has driven much of Israel's clandestine military and intelligence operations against Iran for years. The goal was always to disrupt and delay Iran's nuclear ambitions, hoping to prevent the country from reaching the threshold of becoming a nuclear-armed state. This single issue has been the primary engine of the conflict, creating a cycle of covert action and retaliation that has kept the region on edge. Meanwhile, Iran has leveraged its regional influence to create a ring of fire around Israel. By supporting militant groups along Israel's borders, Tehran has aimed to bog its adversary down in constant, low-level conflicts, draining its resources and military focus. This strategy of asymmetric warfare allows Iran to challenge a militarily superior Israel without engaging its own forces directly. The shadow war therefore became a complex and dangerous reality, a persistent state of undeclared hostility that, for many years, managed to avoid boiling over into a direct nation-on-nation war. But that delicate and dangerous balance was about to be shattered completely. The delicate balance of the shadow war was irrevocably broken following the devastating Hamas attack on Israel in October 2023. This event, which triggered a massive Israeli military response in the Gaza Strip, fundamentally altered the strategic landscape. Because Hamas is a key, albeit sometimes independent, member of Iran's network of proxies, the conflict immediately raised regional tensions to an unprecedented level. The fighting in Gaza pulled the entire region into a vortex of escalation, with Iran and its allies seeing an opportunity to increase pressure on Israel. What had been a conflict fought through intermediaries and covert operations began to rapidly transform into a direct military showdown between the two regional powers. The transition from proxy conflict to direct confrontation was stark and swift. In 2024, for the first time in history, Israel and Iran exchanged direct missile and drone attacks. This marked a terrifying new chapter, as both nations abandoned the pretense of plausible deniability and engaged in open acts of war. These exchanges demonstrated a new willingness to risk a much wider conflict, one that could engulf the entire Middle East. Tensions were further inflamed by a series of high-profile assassinations, including the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh while he was in Tehran in August 2024, an act widely attributed to Israel and which Iran vowed to avenge. The cycle of retaliation reached a new peak on October 1, 2024. In what it claimed was a response to the Haniyeh assassination, Iran launched a massive barrage of approximately 180 ballistic missiles directly at Israeli territory. This was Iran's second-ever direct assault on Israel, a clear and unambiguous message that the old rules of engagement were gone. While Israel's advanced air defense systems, supported by allies like the United States, intercepted most of the incoming projectiles, the attack itself was a profound escalation. It showed the world that Iran was capable and willing to use its most powerful conventional weapons directly against its primary adversary, pushing the region closer to the brink. This new reality of open conflict was further cemented in June 2025. Israel reportedly conducted a significant and precise attack on a target in Iran's capital Tehran, destroying a building and sending a powerful signal of its own reach and capabilities. The shadow war was officially over, replaced by a volatile and unpredictable direct conflict. The United States and other global powers watched with growing alarm, deeply concerned that a single miscalculation by either side could trigger a full-blown regional war. The fighting was no longer confined to the shadows, it was now out in the open for the entire world to see, with consequences that were becoming more dangerous by the day. As direct conflict flared between Israel and Iran, a second, equally dangerous front erupted along the Israel-Lebanon border. This is the home turf of Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful and sophisticated proxy force. Immediately following the October 2023 events, Hezbollah began launching rockets, drones, and anti-tank missiles into northern Israel in a show of solidarity with Hamas. Israel responded with airstrikes and artillery fire, leading to a steady, grinding conflict that displaced tens of thousands of civilians on both sides of the border. For months, this northern front simmered, a constant source of attrition and fear, but it was about to explode into a much more intense phase of fighting. The escalation reached a dramatic turning point in mid-September 2024. In a stunning intelligence operation, Israel allegedly sabotaged thousands of pagers and walkie-talkies used by Hezbollah operatives. When the devices were activated, they exploded, causing mass casualties and chaos within the organization's ranks. This devastating blow was followed just days later on September 27 by a targeted Israeli airstrike in the heart of Beirut that killed Hezbollah's longtime leader, Hassan Nasrallah. The elimination of such a central figure in Iran's regional network was a massive strategic victory for Israel, but also a move that guaranteed a furious and significant response. Hezbollah, backed by Iran, retaliated fiercely. The violence along the border surged dramatically, with the number of attacks increasing by over 450% in a single week. Israeli airstrikes, which had previously been limited to a few kilometers from the border, began pounding targets as deep as 27 kilometers into Lebanese territory. The goal for Israel was clear: to degrade Hezbollah's immense military capabilities and create a secure buffer zone. This would, in theory, allow the more than 62,000 displaced Israelis who had evacuated from northern towns and communities to finally return to their homes after nearly a year of living as internal refugees. The human cost of this northern conflict has been immense. In addition to the tens of thousands of displaced Israelis, at least 92,000 Lebanese civilians have been forced to flee their homes to escape the relentless cross-border fire. Towns and villages on both sides have been battered, and the constant threat of a full-scale war hangs over the population. Hezbollah, armed by Iran with an arsenal estimated at up to 200,000 rockets and missiles, represents a formidable threat. The fighting on this northern front is not just a sideshow, it is a critical and explosive element of the broader Israel-Iran conflict, with the potential to be even more destructive than the war in Gaza. The escalating conflict is fueled by deep-seated fears that go far beyond conventional warfare. For Israel, the ultimate nightmare remains Iran's nuclear program. Israeli leaders believe that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose an existential threat, altering the balance of power in the Middle East forever and emboldening its proxies to act with impunity. This conviction drives Israel's aggressive military posture and its willingness to take significant risks, including direct strikes on Iranian soil, to prevent Tehran from crossing the nuclear threshold. Every move Israel makes is calculated against this worst-case scenario, creating a high-stakes environment where the potential for catastrophic miscalculation is dangerously high. Complicating matters further is the global community's anxiety about a wider regional war. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has been walking a diplomatic tightrope, trying to support its partner while desperately working to prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control. A full-scale war between Israel and Iran could easily draw in neighboring Gulf states and the United States itself, triggering a regional conflagration with devastating consequences. The economic stakes are also enormous. A major conflict could threaten the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes, potentially causing a global energy crisis and severe economic instability. The human suffering at the center of this conflict cannot be overstated. From the displaced families in northern Israel and southern Lebanon to the civilians caught in the crossfire of direct missile strikes, ordinary people are paying the highest price for the strategic ambitions of their leaders. The cycle of violence has created a humanitarian crisis that deepens with every attack and counterattack. Homes, livelihoods, and a sense of security have been shattered, leaving behind a trail of trauma and uncertainty that will linger for generations. The constant state of fear has become the new normal for millions, a tragic consequence of a conflict that seems to have no end in sight. In this incredibly volatile situation, the need for de-escalation and diplomacy has never been more urgent. Leaders on all sides face a critical choice: continue down the path of military confrontation, which risks a catastrophic regional war, or find the political courage to step back from the brink. International partners led by the United States continue to push for diplomatic solutions, such as proposing security arrangements that could restore calm to the Israel-Lebanon border. The path to peace is fraught with obstacles, but it is the only viable alternative to a conflict that threatens to consume the entire region in flames. The future of the Middle East may depend on it.